And how can we use this metaphor of thresholds to really remind us as physicians to really drop into the patient and be there for them?
Well, I think it's really important because people who are in healthcare today are probably dealing with people at moments of threshold, and to be aware of that is really, I think, an asset to the care that's given. I come at it as an artist and as a person who has studied spiritual traditions, and I know that all the great spiritual traditions, all the great spiritual backgrounds have a concept called liminality. And liminality is that point in a spiritual, from a spiritual perspective, where it's either initiating a change, producing an insight, the beginning of acquiring spiritual wisdom. What it means is threshold. It's at the threshold that we begin the spiritual journey. And it is to stay in the threshold. It's not crossing over. And that's the interesting thing. A threshold doesn't resolve itself automatically. A lot of times, the state of liminality is you stay at the threshold as change begins to happen. Why I think it's important for medical people to understand this is that at the threshold of many of your examining rooms, and the threshold of coming into a clinic itself, many people are moving completely out of what is familiar. They are probably to receive some news that will not allow them to go back to what was familiar, but it will put them in a whole new category. The category of not knowing exactly what their future is. No matter how much they had it planned out, their future might not be what they thought. And so oftentimes, a diagnosis of a certain illness will put people right at the threshold in liminality. They can't escape it, even though we try in many ways in our lives to avoid these thresholds. We have to face it, we have to move through it. By realizing that people are at a threshold and that the threshold has a spiritual component, the component of growth, can help the caregiver to attend to some of those other issues besides just diagnosis and procedures. To realize this person is in a very different place than they probably have ever been in their life. Another understanding of threshold traditionally is that of pilgrimage. We're going on a journey. We're leaving the familiar and we're going to a destination, but the journey is the learning process. So to speak of threshold as pilgrimage is also an important reality. Architecture shows a lot about thresholds. So for instance, the great Gothic cathedrals, the main threshold was always at the foot of the church. A lot of these Gothic churches were almost in the form of a human being with cross arms and an apse at the end that was rounded like a head. But you only would enter through the foot, through being grounded, through the base. And there was a major threshold, which was quite deep. And oftentimes people would linger there. There would be a place where conversations would happen, where things were bought and sold, where judgments were made. So the threshold was critical in that time. Frank Lloyd Wright, a modern architect, uses threshold in a very interesting way, and he sees threshold as a place of compression, where things get small, where things are contained. So oftentimes the threshold is only like 6 feet 2 inches tall, so you really have the sense of space bearing down on you. And then as you pass the threshold, the building opens up and there's this great sense of relief. So if we look at the threshold as a symbol, as a metaphor, we can begin to see how people are really in in-between spaces. And that takes special care and special concern to help people through that. And probably the most basic in-between space is when we're dealing with a medical diagnosis. So it might not all happen right in the beginning. Maybe the only thing that a person can exhibit is their own insecurity or their discomfort or their anger at being suspended. But the threshold extends over the whole course of treatment, and that's the time for insight in terms of personal growth as well as physical growth. So to see a threshold as an extended moment of being with people. There's a wonderful metaphor that is used. T.S. Eliot, I think, used it, the poet, and he said, in order for a play to go forward and the set to be changed, there has to be a moment of darkness while the set is changed so that the activity of the play can go forward. So a lot of times you have to see this. This is where the stage set is being changed, and it's staying resting in that place for a while.